It's Mark from Top Local Lead Generation. We're here with Bernie Pawlik, Pawlik Automotive, Vancouver's best auto service experience. How you doing today, Bernie?
Doing very well this morning.
So we have another Mercedes diesel GL350 with a big service. What happened with this vehicle?
Well, the customer came to us. She'd had been driving the vehicle, started making some pretty horrible noises, took it to Mercedes, and they said that she needed a new engine. So she wasn't extremely happy with their price quote, which is, you know, it's high. It's a lot of money to do an engine in one of these cars, and brought the vehicle to us.
So it's another diesel with the motor perhaps gone. What ended up having to be replaced?
Well, what we found actually was the turbocharger was bad in the case of this vehicle. But this is another vehicle, 2012, so it's only 4 years old at this point, 48,000 kilometers, still a young vehicle, in my mind, almost a brand new vehicle. The oil hadn't been changed in over a year. According to the dash, it's like 20,000 kilometers overdue for an oil change. Very bad thing to do on any engine, especially a Mercedes 3-liter diesel. We've already talked about this in a previous blog post about the engine we replaced. So we did our diagnosis on it and basically listened to it. It sounded like the engine was blown, so we started to proceed, authorize some engine repair work and started taking things apart.
So tell us about the diagnostic process. What did you go through to get to that level you might need that level of service?
Well, I mean, initially listening to the engine, there was smoke blowing out, it lacked power, check engine light was on for a variety of different trouble codes. I don't have them listed in front of me, but there's a variety of different trouble codes. But just the sound of the engine and based on the lack of oil change, we made a pretty quick assumption that something in the bottom end of the engine had given way. What was interesting is when we authorized the engine repair, we started pulling things apart. We took the turbo duct off, and Matt, my technician, was working on it. He noticed right away, hey, look at the turbocharger. This is completely blown, and I'll show you a video in a minute. But the turbo is just like a little turbine, and it sits in a bearing, and it usually has a tiny bit of play. But this one was actually completely broken. We thought, hey, wait a minute, maybe it's just the turbo. So we thought, let's take the diagnostic a little more. Let's be a little more thorough here. So we put everything. We only removed a few things. We put everything back together. We drained the oil out, found that the oil wasn't all sludged up, which was the case with our last engine job. So that was a positive sign. Took the oil filter out, took it apart, and we cut the oil filter apart, just examined it. And there was a few metal particles, but not much, just a few little bits and pieces. So we thought, hey, maybe it's the turbo that's bad. So we put some fresh oil in the engine, started up, listened to it, and really the only noise we could hear was coming from the turbo. So at that point we authorized, let's talk with the customer, let's just change the turbo, let's flush the oil a few times because it's been so long overdue, and see what happens from there. So
what was involved in the repair process?
Well, we basically replaced the turbocharger, but in the process we also, there's a turbo oil stand which we have to remove. Found that was partially plugged due to the oil sludging. We tested and verified there was actually good oil flow through there because we didn't want to find perhaps an oil passageway had plugged up and we put a new turbo in and it blows it. But I mean, clearly the turbo had been damaged from lack of oil changes. We drained the oil out, again, found there was really not much in the way of sludge in the oil, which is a positive sign. We did a couple of hot oil flushes. So we did actually 2 oil changes on the engine, and then we filled it with proper oil. So that was basically the repair procedure, put it back together, and that was it.
So what did let's see that turbo. What did that look like?
Yeah, okay, well, let's look at a couple of things here. First, I'll share some pictures. So we've got pictures here. Let's start with some pictures. And this is a picture of the actual engine compartment. That red arrow points to the turbocharger. And so the turbocharger, if you look at there's a sort of black piece that goes across the front of the engine right in front of that red arrow, and that's the air intake. So the air is sucked into the engine, into the turbocharger. There's a turbine blade in there, and that blows the air out through that silver pipe that kind of goes forward towards the front of the engine. That gives the engine its boost, its high pressure, and the turbine sits inside this turbo mechanism. Just as another quick photo, there's our 2012 GL model vehicle. So let's let's just go back here. I'll start the screen share again. I'll have a look at this turbo. Once we get caught up here, there we go. Okay, there's our turbo. Is that visible?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so here's a quick crude video.
That's not supposed to happen.
No, all that movement there is not supposed to happen at all. And the camera's supposed to be steady too, but I did a quick video without the tripod. But I'll just show it to you again because it's pretty amazing. Like, that is just worn beyond belief. Now we're looking at the exhaust side of the turbine here. The intake side, which is on the other side, is basically the shaft is broken between the two, so there's no turbo boost. And this blade gets spun when the exhaust runs through, so you can imagine how, you know, the kind of racket noise it would be making from. Sorry, I'm just shutting this off here. You can imagine the noise it would be making from just flapping around and banging around. So the good news is that was basically it. Now, after what I will tell you is after we put the turbo in, we started the engine up and it ran, but it started blowing a lot of smoke out because there's oil passageways inside the turbo, and it had just filled the exhaust system and the intake system full of engine oil. So it was a bit of an embarrassing drive for Matt when he went out, and there was clouds and clouds of smoke everywhere. Then he came back and the engine was running quite rough and making some bad noise. We thought, uh-oh, okay, it's not fixed. But the good news is we shut it off, left it for a little while, ran it for a little longer, and I think what was happening is there was so much residual oil in the intake system. Being a diesel and being an oil-burning engine, it would get little blasts of engine oil coming in that would cause the engine to run intermittently rough and make knocking sounds. You know, it was like a combustion issue. So I took it out for a good long drive, burnt the rest of the oil out, embarrassed myself a little bit. After about 15 minutes, the oil burning stopped, the engine ran smooth, and it was good.
So it sounds like maybe this owner has dodged a major bullet.
I think so, and I think so, but I wouldn't count on the longevity of this engine. And this is actually the scary thing. You know, we did a few posts about buying used cars, and you know, it might be that the owner might sell this vehicle, and you know, it's going to be running great. But how would you know if you bought a used car that this amount of work had been done, that this oil had been neglected like that? There's no real record of that, other than if they showed the bill for this work or someone actually contacted us. So, you know, that's a bit of a risk of, you know, just to add to our used car posts we've had, you just hope and assume that people have done good maintenance. And this is why you need to ask people, do you have receipts for all your maintenance? You know, have you done all your oil changes on time? Because if people can't produce them, that could be a real red flag. As we talked about, you know, the last person who had this particular issue is a $22,000 job for a blown engine, and his turbo for some reason was working. So, but yeah, so I think the owner dodged a major bullet here, which is great, very fortunate.
And probably the life of this motor is compromised.
Absolutely, you know, there's no doubt about it. I mean, you just can't go that far without oil changes without causing some kind of damage.
So final lesson is, if you have a diesel, change your freaking oil.
Exactly. I mean, I can't say it enough, and especially with so many modern cars, you know, especially in Mercedes. I mean, it tells you right on the dash, change the oil. I mean, just follow that. It's so simple. They couldn't make it they couldn't make it any simpler unless, you know, we phoned you up every, you know, when it was due and kept calling you every day you didn't do it, because the clock keeps ticking. It'll tell you 30. You know, 20 days overdue, 21 days, 22. It's like, you got to do it. Otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of money. So those are my final thoughts. Change your oil. Unless you drive a Tesla, change your oil.
So if you need service on your vehicle from a guy who cares, from a company who prides themselves on incredible customer service and giving you the best deal and the best advice possible, not spending $1 more of your money than is needed or deserved, these are the guys to call in Vancouver. Pawlik Automotive. You can book your appointment at 604-327-7112 or check out their website, pawlikautomotive.com. Thanks, Bernie.
You're welcome. Thanks, Mark.